Well, we welcome you back, one and all, to the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine ahead of qualifying 2, with Group B heading out first here at Spa-Francorchamps, home, of course, to the Formula 1 Belgian Grand Prix. And it's the 7th season of the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. Of course, it's 2019. But as we know it, in this form of the championship, of course, first starting in 2021 after Gregoire Saucy would go on to win the title, also winning here in the process. This is, of course, our 5th season in this entity. And coming off the back of yesterday, we had our fair share of drama, that's for sure. After qualifying 1 was brought to a very dramatic close after a crash from the Axel GP driver of Sakir Al-Moushari from Q8, crashing into the barrier, and already we have a spin heading up through, well, just out of Eau Rouge and Radion, heading through towards Kemmel. A big moment for the number 2 belonging to Edouard Borgner at G4 Racing. Of course, a rookie winner back at Misano in race 2. So as the drama continues, could call that a semi-commentator's curse. I know a few say that it doesn't exist, but I think in that case it certainly does. A truly dramatic way to kick things off. We're going to take a look at the instant replay as to what happened, but coming out of Eau Rouge and Radion, looks like the Trident drive was following in behind. Whether there was any clear contact, I'm not quite sure, but nonetheless, that's going to put Edouard Borgner at a little bit of a disadvantage, with the tyres perhaps flat spotting as they made their way uphill. But there's the number 5 of Ruiki Liu making his way out of Rivage, now through towards Jackie Hicks. Now back to the business at hand before we were so rudely interrupted. George Morgan here, by the way, your commentator, taking you through the qualifying session this morning. The number 6 there of Hayu Yamakoshi looking for a big play today. Really did pull out some extraordinary moves to move his way up the field. Was in contest over that lead battle. Of course, eventually it would be Freddie Slater who went on to achieve victory. But prior to that, as I was saying, we had also a rude interruption in qualifying yesterday ahead of qualifying 1 after the crash from Sakir Al-Moushari brought an end to the session in dramatic fashion, with the barrier repairs taking far too long for the session to resume. Obviously, we have a feast of motorsport here this weekend with a very strict timetable in front of us, so therefore they were unable to continue the session. Therefore, the grid was lined up from the results from collective test 1, meaning that Freddie Slater, who was also pole back at race 1 at Misano before he got untimely spun around by Jin Nakamura after contact coming through turn 2. Well, he was on pole position again, not generally through the conventional methods, but based on off the fact that he did manage to hustle together a 2:11.031 in collective test 1 to grant him a front row visit. As once again we have a G4 racing car around, and this time it's Arthur Aguirre who is round this time, and I think that's coming out of Jackie Hicks' corner as well. So that's unfortunate for the G4 racing driver. Arthur Aguirre, the young Frenchman, stepping in this time, and I'm sure there's going to be some concerns on the part of G4 Racing, who are not running Kasper Stuka this weekend either. Let's see what happened. Rear end just sticking out. Just lost it by himself, really. We have had a little bit of rain come down this morning, and judging from what I'm seeing from the marshals with their hoods up, perhaps the rain is still very much out there on track. And I must say, the circuit is looking a little darker out there, and there is some spray coming off the back of some of the cars, perhaps, though it might have just been a little bit of lock-up smoke from the tyres as we now watch as Arthur Aguirre makes his way down Pouon. Nothing that certainly strikes to us here in the commentary box, certainly from our perspective, that could lead to a introduction of the wet tyres for this weekend. But, you know, certainly a few drivers finding it a little bit testing on the slicks in places. And sometimes when you have that little bit of rainfall, certainly at Spa in a certain location, it can lead to certain areas being slippier than others. And especially when you go up through Eau Rouge and Radion, we've seen it countless times. You know, you reach that almost marble finish of the circuit, lose the grip between the Pirelli rubber and the surface of the track itself, and therefore just effectively get spun. And that seems to be the case if you are Arthur Aguirre coming through Jackie Hicks. Anyway, there's the 99 car of Giovanni Maschio, the young Italian, back in the series for his 3rd consecutive season in the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. Of course, joining RPM last season. They're back with them again for another campaign. And CL Motorsport, we're just briefly seeing them there in front of the number 10, Santaloc, belonging to Nikita Bedrin. They're debuting 2 drivers to the team, not new to us as viewers of the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. Of course, we're witnessing the return of Matteo Cappietto, the young Frenchman who has been with us in the past for a few seasons. Oh my goodness, Maschio. That's a trip into the gravel trap coming out of Campus and Stavolo. A few drivers finding it a little tricky out there. Conditions are certainly more testing than yesterday, and far apart from what we've witnessed in the likes of the collective tests as well. So whether this is playing a factor, I'm not quite sure, but into the gravel goes Giovanni Maschio. Not an ideal route to take at all, not optimal by any stretch of the imagination. Bear in mind, as we continue through this session, the time only gets slighter and smaller. Got 9 minutes and 30 for the drivers to register their fast runs. Of course, it does take a few laps before they can reach optimal temperatures, but I don't think we're going to hit the heights necessarily. We might even be slightly outside of the collective test fastest laps that we did, of course, witness. As I said, Freddie Slater posting the fastest collective test time of all in the first session of a 2:11.031. I can tell you that Slater is fastest at the moment with a 2:26.610. So we are a ways off. Really from where we were before. There's a 98,000th of a second gap between Nikita Bedrin and Slater at the moment, but the times are still cascading down. Slater just going purple in that first sector too. And Prima are fully stocked this weekend. René Rosin's team introducing back Dorian Pan to the grid as well after her recent cameo appearances in the F1 Academy Championship, which she does partake in, obviously full-time, and a winner back at Jeddah once again, back-to-back years where she has won there. Got a chance to catch up with her as well heading into this round in the championship. She always loves taking part in the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, and supported by Mercedes and Iron Dames as well. And the Mercedes team are here this weekend supporting her through her ventures in this series, but also fellow Prima teammate Rashid Al-Dahiri, who is also a Mercedes junior driver. Enzo Tellini, we welcome him back as well after a grand display yesterday. Started on the front row alongside Freddie Slater and made the most of it. May not have finished second like perhaps he would have fancied it, but eventually overtaken by our very first winner of this season, Matteo De Parlo, of course, who took the very first win in Trident's history in the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, and they, I'm sure, will go on to many, many more, with De Parlo's pace at the moment being a clear indicator that they are here to challenge for championships. And I would say that there's still huge question marks as to where the title is going to run, I think, for the rest of the season, with Evan Gilter also being a major factor. Whilst he did not feature on the podium this time around, there were some important points scored on the part of the young Frenchman Evan Gilter, with ART recording victories here in the past from the likes of Gregoire Saucy. As it gets rather busy down at the bus stop there at the bottom there, you can see the 31 making its way through. For our race GP belonging to Akshay Boret, Enzo Tellini now goes first fastest, with Boret second fastest at the moment. Matteo Cappietto on his return here for RPM, now in third place, ahead of Freddie Slater now, who's down in fourth. Now we've got a look here at the 96 Santaloc, belonging to Jaroslav Vasalo. And indeed just taking a little bit of a wide excursion coming out of La Source. But he will have a chance to go again. Definitely a little bit colder out there. We are very overcast here at Spa this morning. Definitely in stark contrast to many of the well, certainly the days we have had this weekend, and actually the rain is starting to form up on the lens of the camera, as you can see, coming up through Les Combes. So there we have it, an indicator that the rain is coming down, and it might be coming down in greater plummets in certain areas of this circuit. That is essentially a characteristic of Spa that we have seen on multiple occasions, just given the fact that it's such a long track that spans over 7 kilometers in length, and definitely one of the longest tracks to feature on our calendar this season. We're still in only the very early stages of this season so far. Enzo Tellini still with the fastest time though, 2:16. We are getting closer to those free practice on the collective test times that we did witness. Of course, Nikita Bedrin from Santaloc registering the collective test 2 fastest time with a 2:11 of his own, but his was a 1:25, a little bit off the pace in comparison to Freddie Slater. but certainly not way outside the realms of close proximity. Enzo Dellini, despite going purple in the first sector on this current lap, losing a little bit of time in the middle. As they now fly through Blanchimont corner, Edouard Borgner seemingly recovering after his little mishap earlier on, coming through Rouge and Radion, that currently the highest placed rookie in this timing screen. Freddie Slater coming across the line after posting a purple third sector, now back into second fastest ahead of Akshay Bora. Enzo Peugeot pops, briefly popped up into fifth place, and now Maceo Capietto into second, displaces Slater. Ruiki Liu into fourth, as we now watch as the thoroughfare of cars make their way down through towards turn one. Matteo De Palo currently ninth fastest after registering a 2:19.412. Still around 3 seconds to find on Enzo Dellini at the moment. A little bit less than that, probably around 2.5 seconds. So now Edouard Borgner pops back into second fastest. So obviously those tyres not feeling too much of the pinch. But we're coming into harem scarum time with 4 minutes still to go. We'll give them approximately 2 laps to register their best runs this time around. And Ruiki Liu has gone purple in the first sector. Has actually matched the purple first sector time with the last first sector time that was purple, with Enzo Dellini to the very 1,000th. That is extraordinary from Ruiki Liu. And has gone nearly half a second up already in sector 1. Dellini currently on a cooler run in a bid to prepare, I think, for another run coming up very, very soon. But they're really having to manage this tyre set. Remember, they've got 2 sets of slick tyres to utilise through the course of the weekend that they have to manage. And remember, they are on a softer compound in comparison to last year. So you could say that management is more prevalent this year than it was last year. But after speaking to many of the drivers, they don't see too many differences between that compound. Personal best in the middle for Matteo De Palo as well. More to come from the young Trident driver. 38.858 in the first sector, met with a 64.865. Needs a big, big run. Giovanni Maschio's gone purple in the middle, but that's snatched away by Enzo Dellini. So that's what may have considered to be a slower run. He was only just outside the spectrum in the first sector. He's actually finding a little bit more pace, as now we see a few of them coming together. Nikita Bedrin coming down through towards bus stop, looking to go side by side. It's not a race scenario, everybody. Enzo Peugeot coming into the pits for a brief review, I'm sure, as now we see a quartet of cars now making their way up through towards the line. Ruiki Liu second fastest now, as we see Nikita Bedrin now popping into third fastest. Maschio goes first fastest now, with Enzo Dellini stealing it back as well. Akshay Bora, his R-Race GP teammate, now hits the front too. So we're now stretching into the 2:14.968. 2 minutes and 8 to go. And you'd fathom that the checkered flag will be coming out for these drivers prior to them crossing the line, which means that this is the final lap of asking here for Group B. Group A will, of course, be going out after this bunch. Obviously, Group A will be benefiting largely from the Pirelli rubber being laid down in the improving circuit conditions, just based off the fact that it's going to be heating up by the moment as more and more cars start flying through this Ardennes circuit. Let's take a look at a replay here. Oh, wow, that's a big moment there. It looks like a G4 racing car once more, and it is the number 2 of Edouard Borgner taking another excursion off circuit. That's the second time that he's been caught by this track. Just coming into the middle sector and running a little bit wide around Jackie X, but recovers well. But will no doubt, I'm sure, struggle to continue, or go again anyway. Looks like he's going to be finishing 7th at best for now, but he is highest placed in the rookies so far, with Tim Gerhards on his return here for Santalot Racing after a disappointing time at Misano. But he'll have a chance to right the wrong this time around here at Spa. Of course, had the chance to meet his father over the weekend. He's got a good support base, as Gerhards, with his family in his corner. Enzo Dellini has just gone purple in the middle sector, currently sits third fastest behind Hayu Yamakoshi, the Japanese talent. Also on a personal improvement in the first and second sectors, so we're going to be expecting a fiery finish to this first group, Group B, here in Q2. is now just running a little bit wide there of the apex there from the R race, as now they come up towards the line. More improvements inbound, as now we await Delaney to cross the line. Giovanni Maschio displaced to 5th, as Enzo Peugeot goes 4th fastest. We now have Akshay Bora down in 2nd now. Hayu Yamakoshi has stolen the 1st fastest time ahead of Enzo Delaney as the checkered flag comes out. Personal best for Tim Gerhardt as well in the middle sector to match the 1st as well. Arthur Agurta finding time. Gerhardt pops into 5th fastest. Now the highest placed rookie in this contingent for Santalok, but no one pressing. Hayu Yamakoshi at the moment, who looks set for his first front row visit in the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. A 2:13.682, I should say, at the very top of the shop, which will, I'm sure, delight the Van Amersfoort Racing team and Daniel Gilles on the side of the circuit. But Enzo Delaney has gone purple in the first sector. He crossed the line with enough time to spare and is looking to go again. He's only 85 thousandths off Yamakoshi at the moment in the first. Remember, he started on the front row yesterday after the collective test 1 times were taken into account. Well, the R-Race GP man looking to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Gabriele Bortoletto from 2022 and usher his name to the front, this time ahead of race 2 in a quest for a first victory in this series. Of course, does pack a wealth of experience in junior single-seater. It's been quite the journey for Enzo Delaney. The young man coming here, 17 years of age, from Shanghai in China, the French-Chinese maestro, now ushering his way around campus and Stavolo. Had various karting successes between 2016 and 2022. But now looking to dig a little deeper, was a Spanish F4 rookie champion after finishing 4th overall with 2 wins and 10 podiums back in 2023. But now looking to finish in a strong fashion. Tim Gerhardt's obviously already taken the checkered flag. We're now waiting the rest. Enzo Delaney not improving though in the middle sector. It's a very poor middle from Enzo Delaney. Enzo Peugeot crossing the line will remain 5th fastest. Personal best for Giovanni Maschio in the final sector goes into 4th fastest. Decent lap there for Maschio. Delaney getting caught, I think, a little bit in the middle sector, crosses the line, will remain 2nd, and Hayu Yamakoshi taking the checkered flag as well, and will be fastest in Group B. With Matteo Cappietto about to come across the line as well. The young Frenchman who competed in his very first 24 hours of Le Mans last year will remain 12th fastest, but Hayu Yamakoshi, his first ever front row start confirmed ahead of race 2 coming up later on this afternoon. Young man representing Van Amersfoort Racing, 18-year-old from Tokyo, Japan. A wonderful display on his part now. The question is, will he be on pole position after Group A heads out? It's Hayu Yamakoshi in first place with Van Amersfoort Racing, with Enzo Delaney heading into 2nd spot. Akshay Bora in 3rd, Giovanni Maschio in 4th, Enzo Peugeot in 5th, Tim Gerhardt's in 6th, Freddie Slater in 7th place, Matteo De Palo in 8th, Ruiki Liu in 9th, with Nikita Bedrin in 10th, Eduard Borgner in 11th, then came Matteo Cappietto 12th, Yaroslav Vasalaho in 13th, and then Arthur Agurta in 14th place. G4 having a few trying moments there, of course, with Arthur Agurta having his own excursions as well, much like Eduard Borgner, but credit to Borgner, despite the struggles, managing to at least leapfrog a few places during the course of that session. But now we swiftly move through to Group A here in qualifying 2, and who's going to be joining Hayu Yamakoshi on the front row? Plenty of drivers to pick out from here, with also the likes of Jin Nakamura looking for a big start after a disappointing getaway yesterday. When the race start didn't go his way, he fell a considerable number of places, and therefore had to work ever so hard to try and clamber onto anything he could muster, and they got a little bit busy coming out of turn 1, and it effectively knocked him out of top 10 contention pretty much, and looking for a A change of fortunes here this time, with race 2 coming up later on this afternoon. Does have a lot of support from the Toyota Gazoo Racing Driver Challenge program. As I said at the top of yesterday's show, he had Kamui Kobayashi with him back at Misano, and he has a great family support base as well. Met both of his parents back at Misano, who all are behind him all the way, supporting his every move out there on circuit. But a big chance for Nakamura here to come back stronger here this time. And Prema very well represented here this time. Obviously, Freddie Slater taking part in the previous session, not quite excelling to the highest levels of what we've come to get used to from Freddie Slater in the past. But this time around, we have Dorian Pan, Jack Beaton, Rashid Al-Dahiri representing the Italian red outfit, with René Rosin looking upon them, looking for hopefully further successes here at Spa. Yesterday, after Freddie Slater's victory, they managed to extend that run, that winning run here at Spa. They're undefeated in terms of race wins in their last 5 appearances here at Spa, with the first of it coming from Dino Beganovic back in 2022. Well, I say undefeated since 2022. Really, it was undefeated from 2023, with Rafael Camara winning, as well as Andrea Kimi Antonelli, and then Camara going back-to-back. One of the few drivers who can turn around and say that he has won on 3 occasions at Spa, the highest recorded winner thus far in the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. Freddie Slater becoming the first British driver yesterday to win here in this series at Spa-Francorchamps, but extending that run to 5 from 2023 onwards. Prema have been supreme here at the Ardennes, as now we watch as the cars make their way down through towards the bus stop once more. Plenty of drivers to keep an eye on, including the likes of Pedro Clearo representing Van Amersfoort Racing. They have a great chance of a front row lockout here with Hayu Yamakoshi's brilliant display, with Pedro Clearo effectively becoming that locker room leader at Van Amersfoort Racing after the departure of Brando Bador, after his stints as well. And they tend to have that one peripheral figure largely at Van Amersfoort. We look back at the likes of Kaz Havercourt in seasons gone by, who was part of the championship in the realms of 2022, competing against the likes of now Formula One drivers Gabriel Bortoletto and Isaac Hadjar as well in the past. First and 10, of course, Kimi Antonelli joining them too. It's been a big year for the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, with 3 of its former alumni making their way to the precipice of this very sport. And a very important weekend for Antonelli, with it being the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix weekend, his home track, very local to him. And a special moment as well for his father, Marco Antonelli. Was very successful in the realms of GT racing, but also exceedingly busy in the world of karting, where Kimi himself has taken young students under his wing and showing them how to race. Certainly wouldn't say no to a driver of his high caliber at such a young age as well, after having only just turned 18 this year, and only just actually receiving his driver's license for the very first time, as the drivers here at Spa look to get their tyres warmed up here this time around. But we have got such a staunch pedigree of young talents now coming through the ranks of F4 at the moment. I mean, if we talk about the likes of Jin Nakamura, who's taking part in this session, a slightly unorthodox route on his path, obviously taking Super GT back in 2024 last year, finishing 6th in the championship with 1 podium, and made his Formula Regional debut last year at the Macau Grand Prix. And with Toyota backing him all the way, I'm sure there'll be more to come from the likes of Jin Nakamura. He'll be hoping for a big session this time around. So we now wait for the drivers to get those tyres nice and warm. Of course, we will be expecting this P1 time to be a lot faster, you'd expect, just given the way the track generates in terms of heat. So they're flying over the crest, the number 7 belonging to Nandavad Birenbhakdi, taking a little bit of a wide excursion there. That's probably being polite, I think, at that point, just taking a really wide line. Still aggressively getting those tyres a lot warmer now. 9 minutes on the clock, though. Already some purple sector times coming through with Nandavad Birenbhakdi now losing that to Evan Giltaire. And we're now seeing on our screens, of course, a race winner in the opening round at Misano, much like the first round last season, where he took victory on debut in Hockenheimring. The quest is the title, as far as young Evan Giltaire is concerned. Packs some raw ability, does this young man. Such a prominent figure in karting as well, winning his first national title in 2018 with the French Cadet Cup. But more importantly, it was his single-seater debut that spoke volumes of the talents of this young man, with French F4 in his locker, a championship win with 6 wins and 13 podiums, which then led to him joining ART Grand Prix ahead of his first Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine campaign last year, with a victory, that very same victory at Hockenheimring, but then another podium to follow suit. This all then led to the Formula Regional Middle Eastern Championship, heading into the start of the year with a fantastic title fight that saw him beat the very talented and highly regarded Freddie Slater, who in his part also managed to smash the records that were laid down previously by the likes of Dennis Hauger and Andrea Kimi Antonelli. So we could be set for a whole campaign of absolute cinema between the likes of Giltaire and Slater, and not to mention Matteo De Parlo entering his name into the fold, as now we see the first times come rolling on through. Pedro Clero currently fastest of anybody at the moment, but immediately, aside from that 220 that was originally set, he now sees himself enter the 218s, and he's not alone. We've now got a 216 from Rashid Al-Dahiri, and with 7 minutes to go, that's an indicator that indeed the track is starting to ramp up a little bit more. Jack Beaton now goes fastest with the first 2:15 of this particular group session. Jin Nakamura, also in the 2:15s, goes to the top, and very nearly 7.5 tenths. That's 3/4 of a second quicker than Jack Beaton at the moment, after taking purple first and third sectors. So at the moment, it's an R-Race GP on top spot with 2 Pramers, or you could say 3 Pramers in behind, because Dorian Pan has gone 4th fastest as well. Purple in the first sector as well for Rashid Al-Dahiri. So plenty more to come. Hang on to your hats, folks. And further back, we do have Kanato Lei and Taito Kato also representing the ART contingent. They've got all 3 cars in this very session. It's the CL Motorsport car of, looks to be the number 20 that's now joined us this season. That, of course, belongs to Michael Belov, who has competed in every season of the championship since 2021. It's hard to imagine a Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine campaign without him in it, almost, but has been a podium scorer everywhere he's gone, pretty much. But his defining year really was with G4 Racing at this circuit. We've had a car go off. That's Evan Giltaire. My goodness me, Evan Giltaire has gone off into the gravel at Campos and Stavano, coming into this weekend as our championship leader, and now a red flag has been called out here in this session. And Giltaire, who was looking for greater improvement, it wasn't a great day for him yesterday, despite finishing in the points. Whenever we talk to Giltaire, there's only one mission on his mind, and that is, of course, achieving the fastest laps, and also, ideally, the advanced points places, and also podiums in his own right. Race wins, in fact. Unfortunately for him, a detour into the gravel and into the barrier leads to the red flag, and he's not alone either, because the number 7, of course, in all the fog of the gravel, it's seen him get collected as well. It's not the only one. There's another car in the middle. 3 cars stacked up in a row, almost in perfect parking placement, just in the gravel trap coming out of Campos and Stavano. Giltaire still not out of the cockpit just yet. Looks like a Van Amersfoort car also part of this too. Now that could be, is that Pedro Clero, who's also in the gravel as well? Extraordinary. scenes here. The number 7 is Nandavad Birimbakti, who currently sits 12th in our classification. But that is a shocking moment right there. 3 cars off at the same corner with 5 minutes and 30 to go in the session. And that was Pedro Clero who went off as well. So 2 drivers, especially that we've come to expect being at the highest end of the order. So first, well, it looked like that Gilter went off first. Off went Clero. It wasn't contact necessarily between them. I'm just trying to see whether the Trident came a little bit later. We're currently seeing a mist of gravel basically get uprooted from the ground. I would imagine that Birimbakti must have been one of the first drivers in there, because of course he was on that far side in the distance. But it's obviously great to see that all drivers are okay. Gilter, I can imagine, a little bit despondent. Really, this has kind of been the tone of the weekend thus far for him. But also Pedro Clero too, which, as it stands, if this does become the result here ahead of the race that could be coming, well, that will be coming up later on this afternoon, we've got Jin Nakamura currently sat on the front row with Jack Beaton ahead of what could be his highest qualifying session of the season thus far. Rashid El Dahiri as well. Dorian Pan in P4. So this could be a very special session, certainly for Dorian Pan as well. 4th row of the grid, should it stay like this. But we will, of course, keep you updated. Remember, of course, we did have an interrupted qualifying session yesterday after the barrier needed to be repaired. And they spent a great deal of time trying to ensure that it was safe for all participants involved. And just due to the tight schedule we did have, it did, of course, lead to the nullification of all times in that session. But we have gone through quite a lengthy period with both groups venturing out onto the circuit. So I don't think anything quite like that will be certainly seen this time today. But we will wait and see as to whether this group will continue its session this time around. I can tell you that the crane is out on track, and there are, of course, we've got to play, or certainly acknowledge that there are 3 cars to be moved here, and they're just about to get started on the Trident, it would seem, belonging to Nandavad Birimbakti. But I'm vigorously keeping an eye on my timing screen, folks, and will, of course, eagerly update you as time goes on. But a shocker there for poor Evan Gilter and Pedro Clero. And again, we talk about the conditions and how they vary at certain points of the circuit. You know, it does make the track rather greasy if there is, you know, a relative level of rainfall. And indeed, it is a common sight at Spa from time to time, as now Nandavad Birimbakti's car gets lifted off the ground. Quite a lot of conversation being had amongst the marshals. I do appreciate, obviously, all the work that they do. They've been quite busy this weekend. Of course, yesterday our timetable was somewhat shifted after the barrier repair was taking place. But Birimbakti's stricken Trident, you can see there clear. I think suspension damage on part of the front left, I think, is quite visible. Looks like it's unnaturally bent. Yes, indeed. And therefore, that car's going to need some work prior to the race this afternoon. And I would certainly imagine, based on what I'm seeing on the front left of Evan Gilter's car, he's going to have the same fate as well. So very tricky, at least for them. Now, if I'm not mistaken, looking at my timing stream, I believe it's Yamakoshi who will be, as it stands, on pole position. We haven't had any clarification as to whether this session will resume just yet. Of course, it does come down to this. But not quite the hub of... Well, certainly not a busy pit lane. Certainly not as busy yesterday when we had the red flag coming out. There were quite a few garage staff in the pits yesterday, just looking to ensure that their drivers are prepped and ready for the remainder of the session. But with 5 minutes and 30 or so to go, we'll have to wait and see as to whether we will go out again But disappointment also for Clero and, of course, Gilter, as well as Birenbakhti. All three of them currently sat 11th, 12th and 13th in our classification here in this Q2 Group A session. And they were both, well, all three on personal bests in the first sector as well. It was a 38.5 in the first sector for Pedro Clero, the young Brazilian, who was chasing, ideally, a high top 10 finish here in Group A, qualifying 2. It was a 38.9 for Evan Gilter. Clero was faster than Gilter coming out of Sector 1, with Nandavad Birenbakhti with a little bit of work to do. He did a 39.1 in that first sector, so it was approximately 6 to 7 tenths off the pace of Pedro Clero, if we were to compare the three. But just to remind you all of what happened in Q2 Group B, it was a 2:13.682 from Van Amersfoort's Hayu Yamakoshi, which will mean that he will be starting on pole position should this remain as it is right now. Of course, that's not confirmed, folks. We do have to make sure that that is clear. Obviously, Jin Nakamura, as it stands, is the fastest man in this group with a 2:15.187. Michael Belov, though, on his return to the series, I think he'll be reasonably happy with that display. Obviously, moving his car into 6th fastest, having returned here for CL Motorsport, who aren't overly clear right now on where they stand in terms of their driver roster throughout the entirety of the season. We could yet see some changes. David and Jack Lee, obviously with it being a fledgling team, brand new out of the realms of F4 where they first started, and you can see there Evan Gilter and Nandavad Birenbakhti, as well as Pedro Clero, just walking through the pit lane right now, so they've safely returned to the garages. There is the Trident, should I say the ART belonging to Evan Gilter, now being loaded onto the flatbed. Crane just making sure that it's strapped up appropriately for it to then be loaded on the back of the lorry before they then take it away. So that looks like that is the last of the cars that were beached into the gravel. But obviously the flatbed lorries need to then make their way off the circuit. You just see Pedro Clero's car in the first of the flatbeds. Already Nandavad Birenbakhti's car being towed away or carried away by the flatbed rounding Corbeil Paul Frere. So credit to the marshals with 3 cars striking into the gravel. That is quite a pacey procedure in getting that done. So well done to all concerned. I can confirm that the session will resume at 12 minutes past 10. So in the next 4 minutes, we will be seeing, or 3.5 minutes at this point, we will be back underway for the remainder of qualifying 2 of Group A, which does mean that there's a chance for Kanato Lay to lift himself off the bottom in 14th and jump Pedro Clero and Evan Gilter and Nandavad Birenbakhti. Kanato Lay actually in his last lap actually went purple in the middle sector with a 61.255. So the only reason his lap came to an end, I mean, that could have been in contention for first fastest, having his first sector being a 38.629, which is approximately 3 tenths off the top. May not have necessarily been first fastest, but definitely in the top 6. Just that final sector coming to an end after the red flag came out. But can confirm, of course, that session will resume. As you can see from the graphic below, folks, 12 minutes past 10, we will be back underway. So in the next few minutes. So bear with us as we now get set, obviously making sure that that any debris is clear and the flatbed lorries have safely taken the cars back to the pit lane. Drivers are, of course, already there. And the rest of the field now getting set, ready to close out the remainder of the session. And there could still be room for some change. Obviously, the track will get a little bit cooler now in the time we have spent off the circuit. And also confirming that Pedro Clero, Evan Gilter and Nandavad Birenbakhti, of course, their times will be deleted for causing that red flag earlier on that's led to this point in the session. So their times will be deleted. So Kanato Lay will, regardless, by default, move above those 3. But how far up can he go in the remaining minutes that we do have here at Spa? But you can never say that Spa is without drama. We have seen plenty of it in the past, and it's looking set to continue. Dion Gouda, the highest placed rookie in this classification too, back again after winning the rookie race in race 1 yesterday. Again, just to state, we're going to be back at 12 minutes past 10 local time. That is, of course, confirmed as well, deemed confirmed by Race Control, and we can broadcast that out to you as well. As we're about to come across to 11 minutes past 10 very shortly, so we've just got over a minute before we get back underway, and green flags will be raised. As now there's going to be some final words of encouragement from the teams to the drivers out there. Can Prema usurp our race GP as Jin Nakamura looks to make it a Van Amersfoort Racing and our race GP front row ahead of racing this afternoon? Can anyone beat the 2:13.6 that was laid down by Hayu Yamakoshi? We will, of course, find out very, very soon. I can tell you that the current track temperature, 14.1 degrees at the moment. Air temperature now sitting at just above 8.5 degrees. But the all-important factor is the humidity as well. 84%, obviously, since the fact we have had overcast conditions this morning with rainfall at 5 a.m. Here at Spa. So it has left us this greasy surface that the drivers have been trying to make their way around on. Of course, it's that sticking point where you then have to decide whether slick tyres are the way forwards. Of course, we have not had anywhere near really the rainfall at this point during the day for wet tyres to even be considered. So the drivers are going to have their wits about them on the slick compound. As I said, a slightly softer than last year's Pirelli tyre. As now they all make their way back out onto the circuit, and qualifying is now back underway here for Group A, here in qualifying 2. 5 minutes to go. Potentially enough time for 2 fast runs in hand. I would say actually it could yet be only one, but we'll find out, folks, as time rumbles on. Of course, remember, a very long lap here at Spa-Francorchamps at this 7.004 kilometre circuit. For those of you who like to working miles, that is 4.352 miles. Here at the very picturesque circuit, home of the Belgian Grand Prix, situated in the heart of the Ardennes forest. Opened back in August of 1921, over 103 years ago, celebrating its centenary year only a few years ago as well. And now here, we once again witness the Tartus T3 1.8 chassis now make its way downhill through Pouhon, the 1.8-litre 4-cylinder Renault turbocharged engine, packing a punch at 270 horsepower. 6,000 RPM. We have a 30-minute plus 1 lap race to bring you as well this afternoon to decide who's going to be our second race winner. It's going to be a little bit of work for Freddie Slater to do if he wants to go back-to-back and follow suit. We could yet see a team break the Prema trend, especially with the fact that Van Amersfoort have a car on the front row along with an R-Race GP. That could be the kryptonite that Prema could be faced with, but they still have the likes of Jack Beaton, Rashid Al-Dahiri and Dorian Pan, currently sat 2nd, 3rd and 4th in this Group A qualifying session here in Q2. Fantastic weekend so far as well for Dorian Pan on her return from F1 Academy. Of course, she's been in all sorts of championships leading through to this very point. The young Prema driver from Ivry-sur-Seine in France, a 2019 French kart champion. She also took part in the Clio Cup back in 2020, Le Mans Cup as well, taking several podiums in 2021. Also racing in Ferrari Challenge Europe, Trofeo Pirelli as well. First in that championship and a class winner in the Spa 24-hour as well. What hasn't she done? She truly is an inspiration to female drivers globally. I'm sure there's going to be many more magnificent moments written in the future of Dorian Pan. And likewise, I'm sure for many of these young drivers across this grid. As now we watch as the 19 ART, they're now down from 3 to 2 now in terms of number of cars out on track. Of course, Taito Kato still out there. Kanato Lei, who was on an improvement on the lap prior to the red flag coming out. We've got 2 minutes left. I can tell you there's personal bests flying up everywhere at the moment. Jack Beaton has gone and set a green first sector, but Jin Nakamura has gone a little bit faster by a hair's breadth, really. Mere thousandths between them as they now look to fly down towards Puon. Nakamura still with the advantage at the top of the shop. Still not enough, though, remember, for that pole position. It stands with Hayu Yamakoshi's 2:13.682 right now. As they now race through around Campus and Stavolo. Purple in the middle sector for Michael Belov this time on his return to the championship. This could be a very important moment for CL Motorsport. Could you imagine in their first season, in only their second round, CL Motorsport moving their way to the front row of the grid for the first time in their history? It would truly be remarkable. There he is now, Michael Belov, 23 years of age. Hard to believe that that is a veteran of this championship, still a young driver at heart as well, making his way up towards the line. Is it enough to go first fastest? It is, Michael Belov. And that's enough for pole position, provisional pole, at least for now. Enzo, yeah, pops into third. Kulkarni for Axel GP in the second as well. But that is not the story just yet. We have got Rashid Al-Dahiri with a major improvement. Taito Kato moves up to first fastest. They're coming in thick and fast. The timer ticking to 0. Half a second or so remain. As now it's Rashid Al-Dahiri, purple in the last two sectors, and enough for first fastest by a whole second. And that is a second to the T, to the dot at the moment, as Jin Nakamura pops into second. A lock up there from Nakamura as he pops himself back into second. Not quite enough, though, for the P1 lap time. But Rashid Al-Dahiri, as it stands, will be on pole position. Should it remain like this with 10 seconds to go? But they have got one more lap to take. So indeed, they will have two fast runs, if you include the one prior. And now as we're at 0, this is the final laps now here in qualifying. The checkered flag has been raised, and it's purple in the first sector for Rashid Al-Dahiri. Jin Nakamura also looking for improvements as well. There you can see him coming through out of Les Combes in towards Malmedy this time. The young driver supported by the Toyota Gazoo Racing Driver Challenge Program, looking to extrapolate something else in this lap. There is Rashid Al-Dahiri. Purple out of the first sector, over a tenth, and nearly a tenth and a half improvement based on what we saw before. They've basically come out of the pits and been immediately let off the chains, looking to attack the remaining moments here in qualifying. There is still a major question mark, though, on whether it will be Rashid Al-Dahiri who will go fastest once more, as there are green first sectors across the billing, and Taito Kato has gone purple in the second sector, I should say. Kanato Lei, though, his teammate has taken it away from him. No purple sector this time for Rashid Al-Dahiri, so just keep your eyes peeled, folks. We're going to be in for a phenomenal finish to this qualifying session, as now they race around Blanchimont now. Two final corners to take, turn 18 and 19. There is Al-Dahiri, currently fastest with a 2:11.436, dwarfing Hayu Yamakoshi's first fastest time. Kanato Lei to the top with a purple final sector. Here comes now Rashid Al-Dahiri, takes it back by over 3.5 tenths. Extraordinary, as there we see more cars come through. We haven't seen Jin Nakamura yet. He's fastest, well, not fastest, but green in the middle. Jack Beaton comes across the line in 6th. Dion Gouda up into 5th. Michael Belov 7th. Here comes the Axel GP of Sakir Al-Malshari, of course, fell victim to the crash yesterday, leading to the red flag. He now comes across the line, will not jump up any higher from where he is, 11th fastest, and that concludes our qualifying session. Jin Nakamura moving into 3rd fastest, but it's Rashid Al-Dahiri with the only 2:10 in the session. It's a 2:10.987 for the Prema driver, and the Mercedes Junior as well. He's in 1st and will start pole ahead of Kanato Lei in 2nd, Jin Nakamura in 3rd, Taito Kato in 4th, Dion Gouda, a brilliant session for the young rookie in 5th, Jack Beaton in 6th, Dorian Pan, a good session from her in 7th, Michael Belov on his return in 8th, Aditya Kulkarni in 9th, Rui Hengye in 10th, Sakir Al-Malshari in 11th, great improvement from yesterday, Nanovid Birenbakti and Evan Schulter, Pedro Clero, of course, out of the session after their crashes coming through Campus and Stavelo. But that is all she wrote, folks, here in qualifying. It's gone the way of Rashid Al-Dahiri. What a performance from the young man. We do, of course, have a race to bring you coming up later on this afternoon. Be sure to tune in. Join us at 4:15 local time. From me, George Morgan. We'll see you then. Goodbye.